Happy Sunday, everybody. Steve Ritter here. So I'm still in the book of Ezekiel, and it's hard going. It's hard watching and reading this prophecy against Israel and how they had sinned and sinned and sinned. And you go through that, and then I get into the chapter 18 of Ezekiel, and God was talking about a proverb that, or a saying they had at the time. The parents eat sour grapes and the children's teeth are set on edge. Basically, that would pay for the sins of their parents or their ancestors or whatever. And God really, the prophecy here in Ezekiel, the word of the Lord that came to Ezekiel in this chapter, he really talks about God's kind of laying out justice and basically, if you sin, you're going to pay for it. If a parent sins and then the children see that and then they go, oh, I ain't doing that, and then they're righteous, they won't pay for the sin of the parent. But then if their kids sin, then basically you're responsible for your own sin. And this chapter really kind of gets into it, and a lot of Ezekiel's sin and God's punishment for sin. But then, you get down in Ezekiel 18, verse 21, 23, and there's a beautiful little section here that I really thought it really stuck out. Through all of this and all the sin that'll be charged to you and all of that. But you get to verse 21, it says, but if a wicked person turns away from all the sins they have committed and keeps all my decrees and does what is just and right, that person will surely live. They will not die. None of the offenses they have committed will be remembered against them. Because of the righteous things they have done, they will live. Do I take pleasure in the death of the wicked, declares the sovereign Lord? Rather, am I not pleased when they turn from their ways and live? And I think about that, and I've talked about that before, the being a father or being a dad and my children, and it really, the older I get, and Peter talks about that. It just says, the world reveals God. The nature reveals God and the essence of God, who God is and everything. We see all of that, and everything are his fingerprints and everything. And relationships and as being a dad, and I see that, and I can see this because the times my children, they are angelic, but they did cross the line times, and they had to be punished from time to time, and I never enjoyed it, never did, and we did spank our children, and. But to an age, I remember having that conversation with Benjamin one time. I was like, Benjamin, you remember the last time I spanked you? He was like 10 or something like that. I was like, you remember the last time I spanked you? He goes, no. I said, I don't either, because you're a good boy. So, but, you don't spank a teenager, Anyway, what was the point I was going to make? I get off on these rabbit trails sometimes. No, I never, we did it because we love our children, but I never enjoyed it, and I never liked it. I never did. And I didn't take great pleasure in punishing my children or anything else. And I would much prefer they listened, because I'd rather laugh and have a great time. And, but the children have to be taught. But, God, I love these verses here because, that's really the essence. God would have us listen. God would have us obey. God would have us do the right things. And he isn't this grumpy old man that's sitting in heaven with his fist raised over our heads just waiting to squash us, And I think that's what a lot of people, talk about, that growing up and being taught that God's just waiting to punish us for our sins. And God is a just God, and there's cost to it, and he would rather us not have to pay that cost to sin, in whatever form it comes. And I love that. So, none of the offenses they have committed will be remembered against them. You know, uh, was the one verse that said, God cast our sins as far as the east is from the west when he forgives us. So he would rather us do what we're supposed to do, and he isn't just waiting to punish you. Um, Although, if you keep going, I mean, that there is a point where you are, and he will. Um, but he's a merciful, loving God, and I just think I draw comfort in that, knowing that God's just waiting there with his fist ready to pound me into the ground and punish me and all of that. He's a loving God that would rather love us and rather us love him. And to bask in that. I just love that. I love that, the thought of that this little nugget is right in here where it talks about sin and punishment and everything else. God's like, I want you. I want to love you. I want to bask in the glow and of love and with you. And so just a little something to think about today as I work through Ezekiel and all the sin and punishment and everything else. I love this. So hope you have a great Sunday, and we'll see you next time. Take care.